Let's talk about how to get the best deal on your next equipment purchase. And part of the answer to that question lies in exactly what I'm wearing right now. Got my winter coat on. So we're in Michigan right now. It's October, and I always kind of lay this out and I think about it, as a dealer, and I've sort of been getting the rhythm of how this whole sales cycle goes. And for us in Michigan, it seems like mowers sell at a pretty good clip until October. Now, of course, we see a really big boom, when we get between March and June, March and July, and there's sort of a different flow for the rest of the year after that. But I've got a pretty good clip of mowers being sold from my lot until October. Not to say I don't sell mowers in November, December, and January, but there's just a different pace to it, right? Of course, here in Michigan, it's when the grass stops growing. And I know what you're thinking, duh, Matt, when the grass is not growing, we can get the mowers for less money. I'm gonna go into a lot more depth than just that fact and try to help you guys understand that dealer's perspective, because of course the dealer is here to be able to make as much money as they can, right? It's the nature of business. But I really see this conversation as a win-win, because I'm gonna explain that dealer perspective. Maybe there's just less business walking through the door because grass isn't getting cut, and that's sort of that obvious piece. But I'm gonna go into a little bit of depth on dealer floor planning and how that affects the deal that you could get. If you're not familiar with what I mean by floor planning, that's where I'm gonna go into that depth of understanding the back end to that dealership perspective. So floor planning, what does that even mean? I'm gonna talk about floor planning. I'm also gonna talk about some other things, but let's take a mower like this as an example for you guys to completely understand. So here we are towards the end of 2025, and I originally bought this mower right here, this Toro Titan with the My Ride. I believe that this came onto my lot probably in January or February, sometime in that range, okay? And so what's very typical for mower dealers is to get a floor plan. What that means is you got a floor of mowers. It's really just a loan. It's just a fancy word for dealership loan. So I get a floor plan, and car dealerships kind of work this same sort of way. Car dealers can pay cash for their inventory up front, or they can get a loan from a bank to front all this stuff. And from the perspective of a dealer, you can move a lot faster, you can be a lot bigger when you use debt, but of course you incur risk, and that's where these good deals come into the equation, right? So if we think about this exact mower right here, I have a floor plan on this particular mower, meaning I have a loan. And the way that it works for equipment dealerships, typically if there's enough, this industry, what is sort of a standard is to get a 0% loan for a certain period of time. It's very common in this industry to get a 1-year floor plan. So if I told you that I got this mower in January or February, here we are 2 or 3 months from that point in time, right? So in 2 or 3 months, what's gonna happen for me? What's the decision that I'm going to have to make? I'm gonna choose to pay off that loan, and we're gonna dip into the cash of Matt right now, or I could choose to pick up the interest on that. Are banks giving me actually 0%? No, they're not. I'm not oblivious to that fact. What's happening is Toro's picking up the loan from this bank until that period of time. They're not willing to do that forever, but they want to incentivize me to buy this for the same sort of pricing. So they are footing the bill for the first year, and it's costing me 0. And that's my incentive to try to get this off the lot in the last year. Now, I've sold tons of Toros, and up until this point, I'm left with one Toro Titan with the My Ride. And so you want to get to that point as a dealer where you're able to get through all that inventory where I can buy in that new, right? So what do I do as a dealer is I think, as far as interest rates get, I get into a really bad spot when you're paying percents of interest, and it really starts to get absurd as far as what they charge you. And that's where I see a lot of dealers get into very bad positions if they continue that loan through. I choose to, at the very end, pay that off in cash. I have to have enough cash reserves to be able to pay that mower or any of the other mowers that sort of slip through the cracks, so to speak. And even if I wasn't a dealer that paid cash by the end of that, I would be looking at picking up really large amounts of interest on this piece, right? And so then selling this for closer to what cost was, I'd be actually losing money. So not really a good position for a dealership to be in. So that's why you get through the year Why do you see so many great deals this time of the year? Yeah, obviously there's a whole supply and demand effect with the fact that grass is not growing to the same degree, people aren't breaking their mowers, whatever the case may be, but there's a huge incentive for dealers to move their product for that reason. On my lot, you know, people walking around seeing the stuff that we got, you always want to look, and I have my, you know, annual green tag sales. When something's getting close to that floor plan piece, or maybe it's even went over, that's when you're going to see green tags on certain pieces of equipment around here. So take on the bad boy side, one that kind of slipped through the crack. This is, I think, the only 2025 model I've got left. It's a Maverick HD 54-inch with the Vanguard engine, and this one is actually $1,500 less out the door speaking from where I typically am. And it's one of those situations where I have actually paid cash on this unit. So this one came to terms, I think, a few weeks ago. And so when I sell that, I'm actually going to recoup and put some cash back in my pocket. So it's a huge incentivizing factor for a dealer to do that. So how do you get the best deal? Some dealers, maybe there's going to be some transparency around that fact, but you can simply ask a dealership, what have you had on your lot the longest? Are there any mowers that are coming close to the end of your floor plan, so to speak? So that right there is a great way that it's a win-win, right? If I sell this thing for closer to cost, but I'm able to recoup the cash and not be out of that, obviously I'm not in the business to break even, you know, in every single case. But if that happens in a few select circumstances or in the vast minority of the time, that's a win for me, that I'm going to kind of keep the cash flowing. That's how businesses stay in good shape. And there may be these general sales and you can tip those things off, you know, but there's specific models that I have around here, you know, whether it be the Z-Master. It seems like with my Toro line this year, I've got a number of commercial units and above that kind of fall in that class, right? So that's where you're gonna see the best deals on certain units right here. And I've got a sea of orange because I got the 2026 models in for Bad Boy and they've come in. So probably half of this lot right here or more is 2026 models. The other ones, yes, they're 2025s, but we sell so many stinking Bad Boys that I'm constantly reordering throughout the year, right? And so a lot of these came in at the very end of the summer. There's not that same sort of frenzy, right, for me to go ahead and get rid of this product. But that right there, there's another reason that you can get a better deal. Let me go find a model here to give you a good example. Let's go look at the Bad Boy Maverick. This is a great example of me having to incentivize something to get it to go, right? Here's a 2026 model on this Bad Boy Maverick, and these sell for $73.49. And then you go to a 25 model. It's actually the same model, but it's the 2025. And this also has the Kawasaki engine. This sells for just a little bit less as it is, just because there's a slight increase in price by Bad Boy, not very much this year. But why would someone walk away with this model instead of this 26 model? Because it's got a few more features. Like Bad Boy this year, and this is kind of common, is they've changed some stuff. You see this seat versus this seat kind of got the new facelift. If you look at this deck, it's got a flat-nosed front versus a slope-nosed front. It's just got a little more of some of those style updates. They didn't do that across the board. There's gonna be these select models. There's really a big difference between 2025 and 2026. And what is to incentivize someone to buy that model instead of this? It's gotta be a little bit better price. Now, you as a consumer, are you getting something vastly different? Not really. Maybe you don't care about those two things that I just mentioned. There's your ticket to get a better deal. And this is a very popular model that I sell, the Bad Boy Maverick and with the Kawasaki engine, but it's still gonna be the reality that I'm gonna have to sell this for a little bit better deal than this one to incentivize someone to buy that product. So that being said, you could actually run across dealers that aren't even in the same model year. You could be one that slipped through the cracks, you know, 1-2 years ago, and you're talking about like a 2024 model. So this is still a current model. These have just landed last week or two, and we sell so many mowers that we really shuffle through stuff pretty quick, but you could come across a dealer that's in a far bigger circumstance than just one model year different. And then we can go a whole nother point of how to get a great deal on equipment. Of course, I've got some used stuff. And of course you can get a better deal if it's used. I think people might be thinking, I want that warranty, right? And so you can get a demo piece of equipment. So we've got a Toro Multi-Force. This is a demo. there's a way to get a little bit better deal. The hours on this model right here are only 5.8. So do you care about that? Usually when a demo is sold, you can get the full factory warranty. And then I got something that we've demoed a lot. See, this is kind of an interesting one. I just said that I normally don't have stuff that's 2 model years old. This one I think might be a 2024, but we've demoed this so much that it's almost turned into a rental on us. This has 70 hours on it. It's actually not crazy, but we've used it throughout the year. And so again, you got even better pricing on this than just something that's brand new, but you got a demo 2000 series Toro. It seems like a lot of our demos, we are using the Toros to do that. So that would be another avenue. So think about all these things when you're buying. Now, if you're watching this video and you happen to be in season because you just broke your mower, right? And you're in the height of spring, the last thing a dealer has time to do is to wiggle down on the price and make the tiniest amount of money. You want your dealer to be here long-term, right? You want it to be a good deal. You don't want someone taking advantage of you. You want it to be a fair margin, but you are also keeping your dealer in business, right? Think of us, think of me, right? You gotta keep these guys in business. But the last thing I've got time for is when I'm in the middle of spring is to scrounge and, cut this deal down to absolutely nothing when I've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mowers being sold on a really big day in the spring, right? The last thing I have time to do is that. And of course, there's that whole just general supply and demand, right? The grass is growing, your mower broke, and you got to get a new one. But when it's this time of the year, I've got less people that are actually using their mower, so you just got a lot less foot traffic. I have more time to be able to potentially work a deal. Now, I'm not going to do that to the same degree on something that I just got that's a 2026 model, but I'd be definitely willing to work with someone on a piece of equipment that was more, in that old stock realm, right? Something that's coming to terms. So create a win-win. Doesn't mean I'm trying to pit everyone against the dealers and be able to sell everything, for no profit, but there's a time and a place where that really helps your dealer, and of course that's good for you as well. And it doesn't mean that the piece of equipment you're looking to buy is undesirable. You can just run into some cases where a dealer has ordered just a little bit too many, or always trying to kind of forecast and figure out what those inventories should be for each specific model. And sometimes we just miss the mark a little bit. Things ebb and flow every year as a dealer, right? So those are some things that I think just give you guys a little bit more insight. I always like to give kind of that deeper insight than just answering that question in the most basic way I can. So when you are looking for your new piece of equipment, keep us in mind. I told you a few deals we've got right now. It's always the case, so you got to look at there's certain mowers that you're more incentivized to sell, but keep that in mind as you go to your local dealers as well if you're trying to score that hot deal on that new piece of equipment.